Another one which I want to share with you is the voice, and it's actually interesting that Dr. Shafis mentioned regarding the drawbacks, and one of the drawbacks is that the patient gets very little time from the doctor, and the laptop or the computer gets more time from the doctor, right? So this is what we're doing at Prime again, and this is again on the voice. So just like image analysis, voice analysis is another one which has reached to a good maturity. So what we've tried here is not really on the clinical side, but I'll come to the clinical side of it. But on the contact center, so you know that any contact center normally records all the calls that come to them for their quality and training purposes, because these are taken and used for training, also for quality checks. Now, when we do quality checks, we always have to listen to a sample set of the audio, right? We need to listen to a sample set of the audio and take a conclusion based on the sample, right? What we've done with an AI, a voice recognition AI, is I can actually upload every recording into that engine, and that engine tells me some of these data, right? So it's not, I'm not listening to the recording anymore. I'm actually uploading this, and what it tells me is, how many. It gives me a sentiment analysis. So how many happy, unsatisfied patients are there based on sentiment analysis out of the callers. So I can see there's a very little, negative kind of a sentiment here for the callers. Of course, it not being a retail, I don't expect everybody to be very happy, because normally they're calling because of a condition. But so I'll have a lot of neutral, but there are a good amount of positive as well. But the good sign is I don't have a lot of negative. Now, for me to look at the entire data, entire recording, and to come to a conclusion like this, by listening to it, is going to be impossible. But with an AI logic, I can actually do that, right? Similarly, I can actually look at what is my volumes. I can get again, this is the AI engine telling me after listening to after uploading the voice file, that what's my, type of calls that I'm getting. What is the reason for my calls? Is it appointments? Is it insurance inquiries? Is it availability for a doctor? Is it asking for locations? So what is the majority of calls I'm getting? I'm doing this over an AI engine. And I'm also looking at, what are the queries? What are their interests? Is it for the different services that we have? Is it blood tests? Is it vaccinations? Is it PCR tests? So the more number of times this word is repeated, the bigger the word is. That's the way I've configured this algorithm. So you'll find that blood test is the most frequent one that's been asked. And maybe the next biggest is the vaccine, and then there's ultrasound, and PCR doesn't seem to be that big compared to other ones, right? Like the blood test and the vaccine. So this is possible today. So how this can be applied for one of the problem statements that we heard earlier, right? That doctors don't have enough time for the patient, they have more time for the computer. Now, a similar logic is being looked at in terms of, can I listen to the conversation that is happening between a doctor or can an AI engine listen to the conversation that happens between a doctor and the patient, and does all the documentation that the doctor is actually doing, because the doctor is listening to you and documenting in terms of your history, like what is your conditions. He would have asked you a lot of questions, your family history. He needs to document all this, because that's how any regulatory requirement is before he prescribes you the medicine, right? So can we actually can I AI engine, like which listens to a voice, actually help the doctor in actually getting these information and putting that into the system? So there is actually work going on with that. The same engine that I'm showing here, actually, they've told me that this is capable of it. I'm going to be testing this very soon. But of course, there are other complexities to it in terms of privacy, and if this is going to be recorded, if the patient is going to be okay with that, and there's a lot of other things that we need to address. But technologically, yes, it is possible, and that's something that where a lot of it's not just one vendor. There are a lot of vendors looking into it, because something like what we call a dictaphone was always there for a doctor, where you would have seen in some healthcare providers, while the doctor is seeing the patient, you would have seen the doctor has a mic and is just dictating, and a voice to text conversion happens. But here we are talking about intelligence, where the doctor The whole conversation is understood and then converted into text. And on top of that, it's going to also advise the doctor if the doctor has missed some questions. It's going to guide the doctor. There's going to be a clinical pathway. So it's actually one step further, which is going to be an assistant to the doctor as well. So which means we're going to give the doctor back his time to actually spend better time with the patient, right? So this is one of the areas again of where AI is. The reason I spend a lot of time on AI is because AI is one area where if you have the data, there's a lot of applications to it in healthcare.